Hello and welcome to Blackside, podcast about, for, and by Black people in the UK. My name is Chukwudi, and in today's episode, we welcome Addi Smith. Thank you, Addi, for agreeing to do this and join us for the Blackside podcast. I think we'll just jump right in and start from the very beginning. Who is Addi?
I am an assistant educational psychologist. I have a master's in psychology and education and an undergraduate degree in education policy, sociology, and psychology. I moved to England from Bermuda about 12 years ago or something like that. And I'm a mum of 4. I think that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, that's interesting. Bermuda, for let's say people who are listening who have no idea where that is, not me, of course, where Bermuda is.
So Bermuda is just off the coast of, I want to say just off the coast, but like 2 hours from Florida. So if you've ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle, it's real. It's a real place. But it's right in the middle of the ocean, but by plane, like the closest place is Florida. It is a British colony, so we drive on the left-hand side of the road. We have roundabouts, eat fish cakes on Easter. But it's a Caribbean, in that it's British, but it's still Caribbean. So the culture's slightly different to what's here. I'm saying slightly. I shouldn't say slightly. It's very different.
Yeah, it's all right. This month, basically, we're looking at Black History Month in the UK. I don't know how much you know about Black History Month, either in the US or in the UK or in general. But like, what are your thoughts based on what you know about Black History Month?
So I am aware of how it started, that it was, one person who, I can't remember his name at the moment, but that he basically created or started the Black History Month in the UK. And I can't remember exactly, but I believe the reasoning was assimilation, that like children felt that they were being forced to deny themselves their culture and their history and become more like the British culture that they lived in.
How relevant do you think Black History Month in the UK is, especially, for example, or more like for you coming from Bermuda to the UK, with your identity being where you're from? Do you feel like Black History Month is something that's relevant as a mom, as well as like having your kids as well?
Well, I'm going to say yes to both personally and professionally.
Right.
So personally, yes, like you said, I have children. I want them to have the space to be themselves, to accept themselves in their culture. And although it's 1 month a year, it gives us like the space and the freedom to do that, where I find the rest of the time people tend to avoid it, or, it's a topic they don't want to discuss. But when October comes around for Black History Month, things seem to be a bit more acceptable, or people seem to be a bit more kind, or at least willing to engage in the conversation. So I do think it's useful in that I would say that sometimes things can be quite underlying in the culture, and it provides like a safe space for 30 days, unfortunately. And professionally, yes, definitely. So because I work in psychology, since 2020 with the Black Lives Matter process and all that, my employer decided that we all needed to have a look at our policies and make adjustments where necessary. So professionally, every month this is a conversation that we have. And in October, I kind of get to go, so what progress have we made? None. But again, it gives me that opportunity to go, what we really doing? And if I'm being honest, that's my stress. It feels like every year we're giving it a theme and we're saying, oh, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but there's no actual evidence of any change or any progress or anything that we're implementing. And like I said, once a year for 30 days, I get to emphasize this with no real consequences.
Why do you think there's no progress being made though? Also, okay, let's take it back a bit. Black History Month is that 1 month in the year where you can question all the actions that your organization is taking to improve things. But somehow it seems like Black History Month and the idea of Black history or making any changes is just a box that most organizations just want to tick as something they've attempted to do. Do you think there's any, or in that situation, do you think Black History Month, that 1 month in the year, is useful in any way, or is just?
I feel like maybe it used to be useful, but now I feel like it's exactly like you said. It's like they're just ticking a box and going, right, well, we've done it. We've had Black History Month. We've had Pride Month. We've done all the things we're supposed to do with no real emphasis on change. And for me, professionally, not that I feel like it's not worth it, but I'm not seeing any outcomes from it. So yes, it's still important. I do still think we should have Black History Month for the simple fact that it's like I said, it's 1 month of kind of freedom to express our concerns, which is sad that we still need it in 2023.
Okay.
But at the same time, if there's no progress, then what's the point?
Yeah, that's
well,
true.
not what's the point, but yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You said it's important professionally, but what about in terms of like the younger generation growing up, Black British kids may not have the connections to where they are from like their parents do. Do you feel like movements like Black History Month UK is relevant in those situations?
I don't think it's relevant to us. I think it's more relevant to people who aren't Black so that they can learn about us and how to be supportive, how to be allies. But for younger children, I do think it's important for them, again, to see the acceptance and just to have those conversations. But I struggle because most schools, in my experience, and I work in lots of schools, they don't really address Black History Month at all. I went to one school and it was really, really lovely because they had, as soon as you walked in, there was a big sign and a big thing on the wall about Black history and who invented what. Yeah. If that was in every school, absolutely, it would be great because it's teaching all the students that we've had an impact on society and the world as a whole, but I don't see that everywhere. So in my house with my children, I'm teaching them. But I don't know if that happens in every Black household. And in terms of it going just in the community, it seems to be based on what people want to teach, or you know what I mean? So for example, Windrush, I'm going to teach my children about that because I feel like it's a part of our history and it's important. But that doesn't mean that it's taught in schools. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's a bit contradictory in terms of what information is put out there for children and what information they learn in schools. And I feel that as parents, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're passing on that information and that they understand where we've come from, how hard it's been, and how far we still have to go.
All right. So I think someone I spoke to earlier had the same views. and they felt it's Black History Month usually focuses on blackness as if it's a monolith. From what I understand you saying is that each different ethnic group, culture, family should be responsible for educating their own families, young children about what their histories are about.
I say that yes, but I say it in the sense that no one else is doing it for us. And as a culture, we need to make sure we're doing it because, as I just said about schools, if they're not going to teach it, we have to teach it. I essentially agree. It's almost like a fad, or what is it when things are trending? That's what it kind of can seem like sometimes. Like it's trending now, so it's popular, but it needs to be a lifestyle, not a trend.
All right. Yeah, I think that makes sense entirely. Like I feel like in recent years, being black has become cool. Actually, like no, that's not true. I think being black has been cool. But being African or being black but not from the US um has started to be cool, especially being black and being from Africa, or yeah, typically, especially from Africa. Um, what was you said you moved to England about 12 years ago. What has your experience been like in terms of the changes in the perception of your black identity between then and now?
So I struggled a bit. So Bermuda is majority black people. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I ever really experienced racism till I left. So, like when I grew up in school, it was the opposite of here. There was like one white child in my class, and all the rest of us were students of color. So it was a big adjustment when I first came. And I remember like going out and going places and just looking for the black people. And I remember my first year here when I tried to go and meet people, somebody said to me, just directly to my face, "Oh, well, you're black, so you probably are younger than we think." And they made comments about my culture. And I just met these people. And then I just had a job. So when I first came, I didn't have a great job or anything. And I was cleaning a pub and my hair was natural at the time. And if I wore it out, they would go, "Oh, your hair's frizzy and you need to go sort it out." And then I went in a shop, and I wasn't served because I didn't use the correct word. So initially I ended up getting quite depressed, and I would say that my identity, not I lost it, but I no longer felt secure in myself and who I was and confident in, my blackness, if that makes sense. Um, I suddenly became self-conscious about my hair. I became self-conscious about the music I was listening to. And I realized it was because of the move. So, for example, Caribbean music here in the UK can sometimes be associated with a certain kind of crowd. But for me, that was just music from home. It had no other kind of negative associations. So suddenly I was questioning everything I knew about myself and my culture. And it was actually speaking to a friend at home who lived in England for like 10 years. And she said, "Don't let that happen to you. Don't let them question it. There's nothing wrong with your music or who you are or your hair. And you just have to remind yourself of that." So I ended up having to essentially develop really thick skin that I didn't have in terms of racism when I left home, because like I said, I'd never experienced that. And in fact, I think it was the opposite. It was maybe a bit of colorism at home, because people would say things about my hair and things like in a positive way. And it wasn't until I came to the UK that I suddenly went, "Is my hair frizzy?" So it was just little things like that. I want to say microaggressions that gradually built up to made me question myself. And my expectations really of who I was or am.
Okay. And do you feel like a lot of that has changed in recent times, or it's still that way?
Oh no, it's still that way. The difference is I no longer care. And I'm and I am absolutely going to be myself regardless, because as I said with my children, so for example, my daughter went to school, natural hair, and the school had this ridiculous thing like massaging thing when they came in from playtime, and they used to have to massage the other children's hair. And the kids would be awful to my daughter because they wouldn't want to massage her hair because it looked different. And they didn't know what it was. And then when she had like braids, extensions, and that, people would like tug on it. And it was all during this, um, this activity in school, and the teachers didn't do anything. So that was like my first kind of, right, we're going to have to start reinforcing this, that it's okay to be ourselves and you need to stop other people from saying and doing those things. And that's really, I think, where the challenge began. It was just seeing my child experience the same thing, but from little children, with the adults not supporting them
Right,
in
like,
the school.
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. That was it. I just took a breath, realized I was talking too much.
No.
But yeah, I just that was when it really started. Was when I realized my children were going to be experiencing the same thing in classrooms, but I wasn't there to protect them.
I think the general consensus is that the younger generation are somehow they developed less prejudice, less racism, or they are more tolerant to other ethnic groups. But from what you're saying, it seems like that is not correct.
I know, like, how can people say that? So, you can Google this, but if you've ever heard of Shakuri Abdibi, so she was in Manchester, a little black girl. She was bullied in school, and in the end, she lost her life because they forced her to get in water, like in a river, and she couldn't swim. There's a young boy in Scotland. I can't remember his name at the moment, but again, very similar situation. He was bullied in schools. There's a young boy in London, mixed race. He attempted to hang himself because he was being bullied in school. Like, honestly, I could go on and on. But the idea that everywhere you go when the younger is fine is absolutely false. In my experience in schools and even in the news, there's lots of children. There was a Bermudian little boy as well who experienced it in school, and his family went to the news to try and do something because there's no help from the teachers in school. And that little girl that lost her life, no one's been held responsible for it. Not the teachers, not the students that bullied her and forced her into that water and didn't try to rescue her when she was drowning, not the parents, no one. So I thoroughly disagree with that. I feel that there are still parents teaching their children their values, and even if they're not teaching it, their behavior is an example for what's acceptable. So no, I disagree. Simply just for that little girl, I feel like we should be saying her name, you know, to remember and support her family. And that's one of the things I think about all the time with my kids. Just tell me if you're being bullied, tell me if something's happening, because they don't do anything, in my opinion. The teachers don't do enough to like protect our kids.
Do you feel like this is somewhere a gap that's I'm taking it back to Black History Month again, or movements like that? You feel like it's a gap that movements like that can fill, if they were more effective somehow, or would it just be the parents that will be responsible for that, teachers even?
I think, I think so Black History Month, the movement itself could, like you said, potentially be helpful. It should create that awareness for everyone about what's going on. But that's what I mean by it's become more of a trend instead of an actual informative or support system, and that now we're discussing themes for Black history instead of let's raise awareness about what has happened this year or last year. It yeah, it as it currently is, no, I don't think it's effective. But I think if they were to restructure it and say, for example, make all schools have a Black history lesson or something just more, I don't want to say forceful, but they can't force schools here to teach certain parts of the curriculum. And I don't see why Black history can't be a part of the curriculum. It shouldn't even be a question. But I don't really think we can do anything outside of as it is. Do you know what I mean? Like with the powers that be running Black History Month. So who's organizing this? That's what I would like to know, is who's planning these Black History Month events and everything that's going on. Is it a Black person? Are we approving it? Are our opinions being considered when they hold these events?
When you ask, we approving it, who's the we?
Us, the community of Black people in England. And because for me, sometimes I do think that's the issue. It's like, so for example, in my work, when we went to have the race, exactly, the racism meeting, do you know what it's like to walk in that room and be the only Black person?
Oh, wow.
That's what I mean by it's hard. It's so hard. So when they're planning this, already in my head, I can picture what that room looks like. And I don't think there are many of us in there because I can almost guarantee none of us are saying, yes, please, let's have a theme this year. Yes.
We've mostly talked about a lot of the stuff I was going to cover on Black History Month, but I still feel like, you know how when you say our presence being where a lot of these decisions are made about what goes into what Black History Month should be about, there's the challenge of who is going to be there because of how varied the idea of Blackness is. I think that's what we'll be covering in the next month. Who is Black? What does it mean to be Black? And so who will be the Black people who should be represented or who should be making these decisions?
It's just in terms of us making decisions, like we know this already, but we're underrepresented everywhere. So I do think it will be a bit difficult in terms of us there, but I think it would be nice if they could invite every year, for example, instead of a theme, invite people from the community to plan that year's Black History Month events and whatnot and what's going to happen. And it can be from various members of the community. It doesn't have to be all one culture. And in most cities where you go, there are normally various cultural groups, like in their associations and that. So in my opinion, I think it would be helpful if they said, instead of themes, if they said, right, we'll have the Caribbean community come and do this week, and we'll have the African community come and do this week. And instead of just whoever's planning it, inviting those in our local communities to be a part of it and have a say, or even just organize it all together, would be more appropriate than I think the kind of local councils taking over.
Okay. But I think, you see, that's the thing though. For example, when you say the Caribbean or the African, I am 100%, okay, not 100% sure, but I'm very sure that a lot of people will be like, the Caribbean culture or the Caribbean community is not a monolith. The African community is not a monolith. There's different opinions and people and groups that make up each of those communities. And so it's still going to be a challenging process, I guess, to get any ideas out of there. Yeah.
I mean, I do think it'll be a challenge, but I mean, the issue for us is the wider system. So yes, we have our cultural differences, but I think being in this country, we need to come together, find our commonalities, and find a way for us to support each other, because we're all experiencing the same thing. So while yes, we might have disagreements and different cultural values and expectations, I think for the very least, we can put those bits aside, find bits we can work on so that really and truly our children and families are safe going forward, and that none of us feel like we have to assimilate or be anything other than ourselves. And again, teaching each other as well about our culture, because from my perspective, no matter where we're from, if we're Black, we all came from one place. So there are some of us, for example, who want to know that history because we never were taught it. Do you know what I mean? And they made sure when they took us to not teach us anything else. So again, it's all those, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I think that would be a really great opportunity for us to come together and learn from each other and support each other, rather than just focusing on our differences. We can focus on the wider problems and concerns.
100% agree with that. To round up, do you have anything you want to add? Do you think people should be aware of, know about?
So for Black History Month, I would encourage every person to, even if you don't really enjoy it, whatever event your city's putting on, attend, because they look at the numbers, and if numbers aren't good enough, it's not going to keep happening. And we don't really need that. We need this to keep going so that we can amend it, to make it a useful kind of event. And being Black in the UK, I would give the same advice that my family member gave to me, and that's just be yourself. There's nothing wrong with you, regardless of what they say. And you're going to have to find that thick skin to just remember, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Your hair, your skin, your food, everything. There's nothing to be ashamed of, no matter how anyone makes you feel.
That's a great conclusion, great advice. Thank you, Addi, for agreeing to do this and joining me on this episode of the Blackside podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This episode was produced by me, Chukwudi Barrah, and our guest was Addi Smith. The music was Welcome to Africa by Nexto. Subscribe to the Blackside podcast on your favorite podcast platform: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, and follow blackside.uk on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, or LinkedIn. Catch you on the next episode.
Welcome to Africa. It's the home of your